Hello, random viewers, and welcome to another episode of the government-controlled series. For those of you who don't know and are new, this is a series where I don't use contracts or anything. I'm simply getting funding from you guys. You can dictate how I spend my funds, what I do. Just leave it in the comments, and I'll do my best to get to it. You can also email. That's in the description. Anyways, here I've run into a problem. I don't have enough money to upgrade the VAB, but I need larger part counts on my rockets. So this is a vehicle for loading the payload onto a rocket once it's already on the launch pad. It's an incredibly fidgety system. It doesn't work particularly well, but it works nonetheless. And this rocket really does suffer from being very overweight. It barely lifts off the ground with all engines at full power. But of course, once it burns through some fuel, I actually have to shut down some of those engines because it has too much thrust. But finally, as you can see, it starts to come off the pad, and then it really starts to accelerate. I start by shutting down that center engine, and then the next ring of engines inside of that. Deploying the payload, very similar to last time. We have a solid rocket booster upper stage to get it closer to orbit, and then it finishes getting into orbit under its own power. This is a vehicle for sending another ship to the moon, so this is a fueling depot pretty much, which will later be repurposed as a communications satellite around the moon. It has to use a lot of RCS fuel. It burns through the majority of its RCS just to remain stable on those solid rocket boosters. I must have gotten something slightly off balance. And then, like last time, this new massive first stage lands. Now, it does have extra sections added to it, so it can carry considerably more payload. This will probably be the final version of the rocket. It also has some, not grid fins like a Falcon 9, but it does have these air brakes that are built with wings and pistons, and they open up and significantly slow it down, so we don't have those incredibly dangerous landings that we did last time with the last version. This is a far safer system. It's still kind of crazy to watch it land, but it works a lot better. And there we go. It has a rather hard landing, but at the same time it remains upright. However, instead of like the last vehicle where the recovery vehicle plane comes up to it to flip it on its side, I've made it simpler for recovery, and this thing has its own dedicated parachute and systems for falling over on its side, including two large steel girders on those pistons to let it land on. We also have a new recovery plane. This thing has 7 engines, and they are a lot larger. It also has these ridiculously elevated landing gears. That way it can be high enough up to sling the rocket underneath. This is much more efficient than carrying it on top, a lot more stable, and should result in better efforts. Keyword there is should. It didn't go exactly according to plan. And later I had to upgrade this plane to have an extra 2 engines and more pistons, but we will get to that shortly. As we watch this aircraft land and dock up to the rocket, I just wanted to iterate that there is some great content here on YouTube for the current medical situation that's going on. If you're watching this a year in the future, you might have no idea what it was, and that would be great when this is all behind us. But for those of you who are watching at the time that this is published, I want you to know you have my best wishes, and listen to some of the content here on YouTube. There's some very good, unbiased opinions that can be incredibly helpful in dealing with such a situation. As you may notice, these pistons are having severe trouble lifting up such a massive first stage, and the bouncing is severe. So much so that it smacks into the ground and destroys a whole section of the rocket. So, quick load of course, and moving over to another hill, attempting to use the hill to speed up. It's here that I really realized these 7 engines simply were not enough thrust to accelerate the takeoff speeds. I finally managed to get it off the ground. You people have no idea how many attempts and how many hours I spent trying to get it off the ground without exploding. But I finally managed, and when I did, it crashed every time I tried to land, same bit exploding, so eventually I just had to give up. At one point the game even crashed, and I had to restart, so I just used Vessel Mover and took off from the Space Center. I'd had enough at that point. There comes a point where you put so many hours into something it's just not worth trying anymore. So I just took the loss of the money and upgraded it for the next launch. The rocket looks very similar, but I made a few edits to where the outer tanks connect to reduce part count. You can see the gantry retracting there to load it up. I also forgot to put Kerbals on this, so I cheated those on too. Sorry guys. You know I have school, work, all the other stuff. I can't afford to be doing separate launches. I meant to put Kerbals on this, I just forgot, so I cheated them on there, because it's just a time-saving measure. It's not a kind of game-breaking thing that gives me a completely unfair advantage. It's just a button I forgot to click, and I don't have the time to take the penalty from that. I'm sorry, guys. Anyways, back to the launch, fairing deploy, and we have a lander with its own little upper stage, and the first stage lands again. Also managed to find a much more flat area, which makes landing the plane and taking back off considerably easier. Landing is even more gentle with the first stage, so all around, huge improvements. Now to save time, I'm firing the upper stage that brought the lander up. You can see I have Kerbals now. We've got Yuzochi and Bob. Oh, Yuzochi goes on some adventures later. Once we exhaust that stage, we drop it. It was supposed to have RCS thrusters to re-enter the atmosphere. It did not. It had the fuel, but not the thrusters. So I guess it'll eventually burn up, but it'll take it a while. We then open up the landing legs. They're on a bit crooked, and fire up the rest of the way. So now that it's coasting to the moon, we send out the recovery craft again, and now you can see it has 8 engines on its wings and then 1 at the back. It also has these 2 extra pistons on the sides. Makes it considerably more stable. Last upgrade on that first stage of the rocket is it has 2 wheels on it. Those are retracted at launch, but now they're deployed so that one spot that kept scraping the ground is now held off by those wheels. Completely fixes the problem, takes off easily. It even managed to land easily. Oh, if you haven't noticed, I do have this footage sped up to match real time. It was not in real time. 500 parts will put strain on even my computer, which is frustrating. And landing requires full thrust reversers because this thing does not want to stop. It's a lot of weight. I think I accidentally left some fuel in that first stage, so it weighed a bit more. Now we're arriving at the moon with the lander and its pusher stage, and we dock to that 2 times at least while we're here to refuel. Now, for some reason, the engine is broken on this this lander. You can see it doesn't have any exhaust coming out. It's still putting out thrust, the engine still glows red, but there's no visual effects. I'm not really sure why it did that. I tried restarting the game, quick loading, nothing. The engine is just, I guess it's gone extra clean with its emissions. Who knew we had to protect the atmosphere of the moon? Didn't even know the moon had an atmosphere. I think it does technically, but it's tiny. Anyways, we're way off topic. We're back to a nice landing, and then we have some science, and we get 7 different landings in on this mission. I might only have footage of 6 of the 7. I can't remember exactly. Anyways, we land in this big crater, hop over to another little crater, land there, using the cockpit view with that radar altimeter. Is a very helpful trick for those of you still learning the game. Touch down here, and then it's more science, more flags from this biome. And you can see these Kerbals are thrilled. Touch down at one more zone. We're right near the North Pole, and this is where we get some interesting things happening. So let's switch over to Yuzochi. We're going to send him to check out this North Pole of the moon. It should be this mountain right here. And Yuzochi's going over to it, but then he begins falling. So there's a lot of tumbling, and I'm not too happy with Yuzochi. Then he glances over at that random shadow donut over there. Maybe he's hungry. He tries climbing, fails miserably, starts going backwards. At this point, I'm not even touching the controls. He's just doing this on his own, and he tumbles towards a pit of some kind of abyss of death. I was not thrilled at this point. Yuzochi seemed thrilled. I can't imagine why. That is absolutely certain death, just inches away from him just about. And mercifully, he hits a tiny little bump, which stops him. Just mere feet from whatever that is. I was not in any mood of finding out. It appears that Yuzochi lives in a video game. How unfortunate. He makes the wise decision and escapes immediately, using that jetpack of his, and goes back to the craft, contemplating what he has found. It probably scarred him for life. Anyways, back to the orbital tug that brought it over, refueling the lander. And then it goes on to land, I believe, in 2 more locations, refuels again, and then 3 more locations. It was a lot of landings. Or was it another 2? I can't even remember. it was a lot of landings, we'll just put it that way. Touchdown here, flag, here's another landing, there's a refueling in there somewhere, here's another landing, and another landing, not lagging, plenty of lagging in this video, but not there. And now it's time to return home with the lander. And this brings up an interesting point. The same Kerbals keep going on missions. I need more recruits. So, for those of you who don't know, I will name people after you. Yuzochi is a real person. He loves to comment on the videos sometimes. He's been very helpful in the past, but as of late he's been busy with school. Anyways, it is very important that we have him here, but if you would like a Kerbal named after you, just let me know. We also have Void Kerman, and then a few other names that were suggested by others. And we get a massive amount of science, we unlock those, but what we have is enough material to go on an expedition with these ground stations. I don't know how the breaking ground stations work. It was at that DLC update, but I've got the technology now. We're going to fly to the North Pole in a plane I've developed, but I need Kerbals with your names, and I want your suggestions, so tell me what you want to see. And thank you so much for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Look forward to the next episode. And last announcement, at some point soon, I'll be putting out another channel. I'm going to move all my real-life stuff kind of over to one channel. I'll leave whatever's already on this one here. But later, all real-life stuff will go there, and this will become more of a Kerbal channel. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope you all have a very nice day.